Tensions between Iran and the United States have once again reached a delicate juncture where conflicting waves of diplomacy and military pressure are simultaneously engulfing the entire region, and the third round of indirect negotiations has now begun in Geneva, with Oman mediating between the two sides, while the ground realities and intensity of statements indicate that this struggle between hope and apprehension could take a dangerous turn at any moment. For this reason, countries around the world and the global economy are waiting anxiously. On the surface, both parties are present at the negotiating table, but the ongoing military preparations and threatening statements have clearly cast this process under a thick shadow of uncertainty. While it remains to be seen in Geneva's tense atmosphere how diplomacy conducted under intimidation and threats can succeed, Oman's foreign minister has been actively shuttling between the delegations, and before the talks, he also met the head of the International Atomic Energy Agency, underscoring the technical sensitivity of the discussions. In his recent State of the Union address, US President Donald Trump once again claimed that the United States had completely destroyed Iran's nuclear program last year so that it could never develop nuclear weapons. He said that following US strikes, Iran had been clearly warned not to attempt any revival of its weapons programs, especially nuclear activities. Yet, according to him, Iran is moving again toward the same malicious intentions. This stance reflected not only a harsh tone, but also prominently contained the threat of possible military action. At the same time, US Secretary of State Marco Rubio reiterated that President Trump prefers diplomacy with Iran, signaling that Washington officially continues to project negotiations as its primary option. However, a significant contradiction also emerged within the same statement when US Special Envoy Steve Witkoff said that Iran is only a week away from gaining access to industrial grade bomb making materials. If US strikes had truly destroyed Iran's nuclear program entirely, then reaching this level in such a short period raises a major question. Experts have also expressed doubts about this claim, and neither the United Nations nuclear watchdog nor US intelligence presented concrete evidence last year that Iran was actively pursuing nuclear weapons. The president of the National Iranian American Council observed that Trump's approach to negotiations appears heavily focused on coercion, describing him as a gambler who has doubled and tripled down on what may initially have been a bluff rather than a genuine commitment to open ended war. The president of the council suggested that while there may be a perceived low risk military option to strike Iran and exit quickly, a full scale confrontation would demand significant time, assets, human capital, and political capital. Meanwhile, the third round of indirect nuclear negotiations between the US and Iran is currently underway in Geneva under Omani mediation, where senior officials are addressing key elements of Iran's nuclear program. The Iranian delegation is led by Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi, while the US team is headed by Steve Witkoff and President Trump's son-in-law Jared Kushner. Araghchi stated that Iran is committed to achieving a fair and balanced agreement and seeks productive progress in the shortest possible time. Before the talks began, Iran presented a draft proposal to Oman, reportedly aimed at testing Washington's seriousness in pursuing an agreement. According to Omani state media, during meetings in Geneva, both Iran's proposals and the US responses and inquiries regarding the main elements of Iran's nuclear program, as well as the necessary guarantees for an agreement, were reviewed. Oman's foreign minister said US negotiators demonstrated unprecedented open mindedness to new and creative ideas and solutions. Reports suggest that Tehran may propose reducing its current stockpile of highly enriched uranium to demonstrate that its aim is civilian rather than nuclear weapons production, in a manner similar to the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action. On the other hand, President Trump, addressing Congress, said that his priority is resolving differences through diplomacy, but he also made it clear that if Iran does not agree, bad outcomes may arise. He had also announced on February 19th that Tehran would be given roughly 10 to 15 days. His statement that we haven't heard those secret words that we will never acquire nuclear weapons reflects American distrust, fueled by a highly active Israeli lobby. Additionally, he accused Iran of developing missiles capable of striking U.S. territory in the near future and claimed that Iran has been involved in roadside bomb attacks in which U.S. personnel and civilians were killed. Although Iranian president described previous negotiation rounds as encouraging gestures, he also warned that Tehran is prepared for all possible scenarios. Iran has consistently maintained that its nuclear program is entirely peaceful and civilian, and it will not compromise on national security. From day one, Iran's policy has been that discussion is possible regarding the scope of nuclear enrichment, monitoring mechanisms, and transparency, but no compromise on defensive sovereignty or regional influence is acceptable. Amid rising fears of war, Araghchi warned that in the event of conflict, there would be no victory for anybody. It would be a devastating war, reflecting Tehran's attempt to frame diplomacy as the only rational path forward. This is the point where, due to Israel's intentions and desires, the US dual strategy becomes evident. On one hand, negotiation tables are arranged. On the other, US military presence in the Middle East is being increased. The combination of flexibility in diplomatic statements and rigidity in military preparations is raising fears of a military confrontation in the region. Even analysts such as Jamal Abdi argue that both sides have substantial interest in finding a workable deal, noting that the military alternative does not appear to have been thoroughly thought out and could require a major long term commitment. In the past, we predicted that the likelihood of direct war between Iran and the US was 70%, while the chance of no war was 30%. But observing the current statements, deadlines, and military movements, this ratio seems to be gradually changing. If, God forbid, the US targets Iran, it is possible that this confrontation will be limited, lasting a few days or weeks, but its effects will be extremely wide ranging and destructive. Oil supplies in the Gulf will be affected, uncertainty will increase in global markets, energy prices will skyrocket, and the global economy, already under pressure, will face a new upheaval. At the same time, an increase in proxy group activities in the region and the involvement of Israel, Lebanon, Iraq, and Gulf states cannot be ignored. And last time, when Iran attacked a US airbase in Qatar, similar diplomatic negotiations and silent agreements followed. After a limited US attack, Iran could repeat such an action to maintain its national honor and dignity, and to give Donald Trump a path to declare his victory, though the likelihood of this is decreasing because Trump and his administration have brought themselves to a point from which returning is increasingly impossible. There is a need for the US to reconsider its policy and genuinely give diplomacy a chance rather than demonstrating power. Likewise, Iran must take transparent and confidence building practical steps to alleviate the concerns of the international community. Otherwise, this confrontation could not only engulf the Middle East, but also drag the Western world into economic and strategic instability. History bears witness that starting wars is easy and ending them is difficult. And if reason and prudence fail to control emotions this time, the consequences could be felt for generations.